Hello everyone, welcome to today's Festive Tech Calendar 2021 entry. My name is Luis Beltran. I am a Microsoft MVP from Mexico living in Czech Republic in Artificial Intelligence and Developer Technologies. Today, I'm going to explain how you can draw Christmas controls in mobile applications with Xamarin. Xamarin is a technology that you can use to create applications using C# and they will be deployed in Android, iOS, Windows, and other platforms. Let's get started. There are more than 40 controls that you can use in your mobile applications, and one of them is shapes. Shapes is a view or control that you can use to draw several forms or shapes in Xamarin Forms 5. In this example, you can see an ellipse, and several properties are included, such as the stroke, which is kind of border, then the thickness, the width of that border, fill, which of course means what color is inside this shape, and as you can see, this is precisely an ellipse. And there are others, such as width, height. There are different types of shapes that we can include in our mobile applications, such as rectangle, polygon, polyline, and path. And in all cases, they share several properties, including the ones that we mentioned earlier, such as stroke or fill. And there are others, such as stroke thickness and the points. In polygon and polyline, for example, you want to draw each side. You can include that one using combination of points, X and Y. To demonstrate this, let's draw a Christmas tree. So in our application, you can see that we already have a Christmas tree, but how we created it using shapes? Well, we have our page, Christmas tree control. And in this case, you can see several polygons. There are 4. This represents this triangle, for example. You can imagine that this is a triangle. And the points 100 and 0, imagine that in this part, it's the beginning of your axis. So this is position 0, 0. Point 100 means let's move in X, that is to the right, 100 points. And not change in Y, so that's this point. Next point will be 0, 100, so that is from the beginning, from our 0, 0. Now let's move 100 points or positions below in Y axis. So it's this point. And a line will be drawn because this is a polygon. So this is 1 point, second point, and the third point represents 200 in X, so that is this part, and 100 in Y, and which effectively creates a triangle shape. Since there are 3 elements and a polygon is a closed shape, automatically Xamarin will join the last point with the first one. And the same applies to the next couple of polygons. There is second triangle here and third triangle here. Regarding the 4 element, this is the trunk of the tree. I could have also drawn a rectangle, but I just leave it to continue with polygons. So in this case, this is the shape. And as you can see, there are 4 points. After that, this control, which is actually a content view, can be included as part of this page. This is a content page. I include the reference of the folder or namespace where I have my controls. So I can use the control with the name Christmas tree control. Here it is. And I do that to include the shape or color that will be part of the wall control itself, that is for the leaves and also for the trunk. How this is differentiated? Well, if we go back to our control, there is also a C# class. In this C# class, there are several bindable properties. Those are elements that I can use in my XAML or C#. Well, let's go to Christmas tree control C#. Yeah, this is the one. And as you can see, there is leaves property, leaves brush property. This is a brush. To fill the shape, we use brushes. We will explore this topic after the explanation of the Christmas tree control. But for the moment, this is kind of like the color. So this is a leaves brush property, and this is exactly the one that is included here. And there is another trunk brush, which you can see here. The rest is just code that when the color or brush is specified, we will fill the area with that brush or color, both for the leaves and for the trunk. And as you can see, this fill brush methods mentions fill and stroke property. Fill the content, stroke the border. You can see that there are other shapes, such as spheres, but we will explore this a bit later. Next, when we want to paint a shape, as we mentioned, we will use a brush. So for the brush, we have the stroke and fill, which could be just name of colors like dark blue, red. In Xamarin, we can also specify hexadecimal color. Although there are other possibilities. much more powerful. Rather than just using a solid color brush, this is an example of a solid color brush. We can also create some effects. Linear gradient brush and radial gradient brush. For linear gradient, this is one of the possible effects. This is part of a shape. And you can see how the gradient goes from one color to another or a collection of them. To specify where we change from one color to another, we specify stops, gradient stops. This linear gradient is bidimensional. As you can see, X and Y coordinates are specified. So this one goes from left to right and from top to bottom. And several stops are included. So it starts with yellow color and slowly transitions to red. The first quarter of this shape is from yellow to red. After that, it turns to blue, but not immediately. So it goes little by little from red to blue. And finally, from blue to lime green. This is a linear gradient brush. And radial gradient brush follows the same principle. Although in this case, it starts from the center to the outside, from red to dark blue color. So, to study that, let's create some spheres. Now we have Christmas sphere control. And there are two shapes included here, a polygon and an ellipse. The polygon represents this small part, which is in green color. And the ellipse, it's a perfect circle because it has the same height and width. So there you can see the shape. Although no fill or strike is specified. If we go to the C# code of the Christmas sphere control, we will see several bindable properties, which we can specify later when we consume this control in our page. There is one bindable property, sphere brush property, which we will use for the fill brush or color of each sphere. That is brush type, and by default it is transparent. If we analyze the code, when we specify the brush color, it will call the fill brush method, which detects the ellipse and then uses the same brush for the fill and the stroke properties. After we create this base control, this template, if you want to name it, or in Xamarin we know this as custom controls, we can include it in our page. So now let's go below, and you will see this stack layout horizontal. It means that all the elements will go from left to right. And you can see several Christmas controls here, 5 actually. this will effectively create a control that includes a polygon and an ellipse. Let's analyze the first one. Here we specify the sphere brush property. That's the one we define here, sphere brush. And there we include a radial gradient brush with 2 gradient stops from light blue to blue. And as we mentioned in the presentation, it starts from the center to the outside. This offset actually specifies where it is going to start from light blue, transitioning to second color, blue. This creates some shadow effect. If we check the other controls, we see second sphere, which goes from light cyan to orange, in again another radial gradient brush. And the same applies for the other spheres. The third one from light gray to dark gray. And we change the center position. By default, it will be exactly at the center, but we can move this focal point, let's call it. Let's just see the final 2 spheres, and you will see the transitions from pink to red, or from this hexadecimal color to the second one in the last sphere. This is an example of radial gradient brush. And if you remember, when we check the Christmas tree control, we had a linear gradient brush for the leaves, and you can see the transition from left to right using light green and dark green color. And it might not be seen at all, but this trunk also has a linear gradient brush from this light brown to dark brown. And this one goes from top to bottom. So as you can see, it's kind of easy to create controls in the shape that we want to include and add color effects. And we are not limited to specific or base shapes like polygons, rectangles, or circles. We can also draw a Christmas star. If you remember, we said that one of the shapes, it's a path. The path can be used to draw actually any form. And for that, we have a third control, which is this star. This star is a path, but how do you define a path? You can look on internet for SVG paths. This is actually an SVG vector. And all these points represent the location of every point, every member of this path. So we don't have to use lines. For example, we could create this star shape with a polygon or with a polyline. But sometimes it might be easier to get an SVG path from internet or from any other source. This Christmas star control is another element, another content view that we can include in our main page. After the Christmas tree control and after the spheres, we have a Christmas star control with golden rod color. Star stroke is also another property from our Christmas star control. If we check the code, there will be the star stroke brush property, which is bound to the bindable property star stroke property. This just represents the brush, and I use it only for the stroke, not for the fill, although I could have done it. So we completed another example of another shape that we can draw. But it's okay if we can see this, but could we actually add some interaction? We can. In Xamarin, we have different gestures that we can bind to our controls. And one of them is the drag and drop. So that is, we can take one of these controls, for example, the sphere, and place it in the tree. How do we do that? Well, there is extra code in each of these controls. So let's analyze the sphere, Christmas sphere control. You can see that in our content view, we have a gesture recognizer section. And here we have the drag gesture recognizer. Of course, we can take each of these spheres, can drag them. And we need to know where we can place it, and that is the drag. But let's start with drag. The drag gesture recognizer will execute the onDrag event handler. We define this in the C# code. And also we enable, it would be possible that we want to disable this behavior. Can drag, we set it to a Boolean value. So what is in the code onDrag? onDrag takes the element and creates a copy of it. This drag event handler can pass data. This data property includes a tag, such as the sphere, and the copy of the ellipse. I will use this to get later the width, height, and fill properties. Basically, the brush of the sphere, to know what to draw here. Because as you can see, we have the sphere 2 times. Because maybe we want to drag the same sphere onto the Christmas tree. So, onDrag is used to pass the data, what I want to send to some other place. And the drag event or drag gesture is bound to the control. In this case, the wall stack layout, because I also want to take this green part. Now, the drop gesture recognizer must be in the tree, because that's the place where I am including adding each of the spheres. So let's go to Christmas tree control. And exactly, we have a drop gesture recognizer. There is similar property allow drop, a Boolean one, and an event handler drop. What is in the code? In the drop method, we take the data that comes from the or with the object. And if this object is an sphere, we will obtain or we will cast the properties, the sphere, and we will cast it to an ellipse where we will take the field to draw or create a new Christmas sphere control. That's why you can see that the same brush that is used for the sphere is included in the target object. There, I simply add the new instance, the new copy of that Christmas sphere. And there are up to 5 positions where I can place in this Christmas tree control, which are specified here. These tuples specify position of the first sphere, second, third, and here on the bottom of the tree, there I can place 2 more spheres. These are absolute positions or points, X and Y coordinates, where I can place those controls. And actually, and just to conclude, this Christmas star also can be included in the tree. So I can drag and drop it. And of course, it goes on top of the tree. As you can imagine, the Christmas star control also has a drag gesture recognizer and the onDrag event handler. In the code, we simply pass a copy of the star using the data, that is the points that we want to include in the control, and the stroke color. On the tree, there is a decision. If you remember, we analyzed if the data properties include a sphere. Otherwise, we will check if the property name is star, because when we add the properties that we are sending from the Christmas star control, we also include the tag or the key star, which on the tree, on the drop event, is calced. In that case, I know that I can create a Christmas star control with the color of that stroke and add it to the layout, that is the Christmas tree control. And just to conclude, I will take these 2 other spheres, and our tree is fully decorated and complete. I hope that you have enjoyed this session. It is interesting, and developing mobile applications can be fun, as you saw. Enjoy the holidays and also the rest of the festive tech calendar. All the best during this month. Enjoy with your family. And don't forget to also donate to the festive calendar. They are doing an amazing job. Thank you very much, and see you next time. Goodbye.